Hello and welcome to the Home Turn YouTube channel. It's your presenter Josh. I hope everyone is doing well today, and thank you very much for tuning in to another one of our Cheltenham preview videos. Just to recap on what we've already been through previously, we've had a look towards the novice and juvenile hurdles. We've also discussed the novice chases and the champion bumper. And today's episode, we're looking towards the Cheltenham Festival handicaps, as the initial entries have already been made. I think the weights will be coming out as of Tuesday this week. This video is aiming to be out on Monday, so this may obviously change some of our tactics here. But as I said, I want to just get this all done because there are a fair few to look through. Obviously, we're going to start off with the handicap chases, proceeding in order of actual distance of cover. So Grand Annual first, Muir last, and then we'll go to the handicap hurdles, exactly the same format, being the Chianti first, and then we'll finish off with the Pertemps. So appreciate everyone's time and tuning in. And if you've enjoyed this video and the last videos, please like and subscribe to the channel. As I said, we're going to have some more content coming out this week. This will be aimed out on Monday, and then we should have a video regarding the Cheltenham Festival open races by the end of the week, on probably Thursday or Wednesday, depending on what it looks like when we're looking towards the weekend at Kelso with the Moor Battle preview as well. So anyway, I appreciate everyone's time. We're going to get straight into the video now. Um, Thank you very much for watching. Now looking towards the Johnny Henderson Grand Annual Chase, which is obviously the 2 mile handicap chase on the Wednesday of the Cheltenham Festival. The market favourite in this is the Gavin Cromwell trained My Mate Mozzie, who is around 9 to 1 best, 7 to 1 best price. I think now most bookmakers have him up at kind of 6 to 1. And I would say, to be honest with you, from a punting perspective, he's a very will be one of my stronger actually fancies in regards to the race. I can see why he is favourite. There's a slight concern that he may well actually skip this and go to the Arkle, just with Gavin Cromwell coming out and saying his main target is the Grand Annual, but depending on how the Arkle field shapes up, he could well go and contest in that Grade One. Obviously, ran in the Grade One at where was it? Leopardstown on Boxing Day, when he finished second there over 2 miles 1 furlong. 2 mile 1 furlong, sorry. To Founder 50, he obviously went and franked that form going down a short head in the Irish Arkle at the DRF. So that's a really strong form. He obviously hasn't been reassessed by the UK handicapper since then, which may slightly be an issue because he is at the moment rated about 146 in Ireland. After that, obviously, he came over in October time to Cheltenham when he absolutely hosed home in a 2 mile and novices chase. There, I don't think he beat a massive amount, but he did that very convincingly. They beat Jetronic for Paul Nichols actually that day, and did that very convincingly. Obviously, it wasn't even didn't even come off the bridle, um, and clearly enjoys the Cheltenham Chase course. As I said, I think he's going to want better ground as well, though. That's the one thing. If it was to come up a little bit soft, there may well be a little chink in his armor. It would depend how he gets rated after that Grade One performance as well. But I can see at the moment why he would be top of the market if you know he's going to go here. Well, the likelihood is he will go here. And as I said, so he could. That's where your money would be safe is. However, I do think he's slightly short, and if you're going to play him, I feel like you may as well not just play him on the day because there are a few variables depending about the Arkle, obviously, whether he goes to the Arkle, and then also I would say ground slightly. It would be my concern if it were to come up soft for him. Um, with that being said, there are a few also in here that I think would be of interest. I'd say the first one would be Evan Williams, Liberty Hunter. He obviously went and won on Boxing Day. No, sorry, on New Year's Day at Cheltenham. Um, obviously in January. He won, beating Matata by I think it was about length and a quarter, or around 2 lengths basically. Obviously, Matata was giving away lumps of weight that day, around a stone to Liberty Hunter, but he did it well on heavy ground up the Cheltenham Hill. He looked like he'd be a very strong stayer, and I think he enjoyed the track and the jumping test. I would say, obviously, if it was to come up really soft and heavy, not saying that it normally does, but if it were to, he would definitely come into my equation. I think at the moment his best price is around 10 to 1. No, 12 to 1 actually best price. So he's also been confirmed by Evan Williams as to where he's going to be aimed towards. So I think again you have that certainty that you know this is really a target, whether it, it works out from a ground perspective for him as well. I'd say you can wait and play on the day. If it were to come up really heavy, then he would definitely factor into the equation. You obviously got the likes of Madara for Sophie Lynch, who obviously won at the DRF, the big handicap, 2 miles, 2 miles at the DRF as well. Um, and again, hasn't really been pushed up massively in the weights for that. Well, it has been raised £10, so um, could be starting to step out of maybe the comfort zone there, but seems to be very progressive and has won at Cheltenham before as well. So course form, I do think is important at Cheltenham, especially in these big handicap fields, which Madara's already done. So again, definitely one to think about when going into these. Now, for me, I would say the one I'd be fairly interested in potentially here is actually the well, first of all, last year's winner, Muscada, obviously has kind of flattered to deceive this year a little bit. Won last year by beating the Mares Chase favourite now. The name escapes me. I apologise. But beat her pretty convincingly um, last year, and it's 20-1 for this now, having been pulled out of most other contests like the Mayor's Chase, for instance. I think the only other one ended up in is a Champion Chase. I highly doubt she'd go there. She's been dropped a few now, and did win off a mark of 142 last year, and is already to 149. Was dropped from 151 though. I wouldn't necessarily think the English handicap is going to have much more to give her. I think she's been pretty disappointing at the 3 runs this year, but I wouldn't rule her out. She clearly enjoyed Cheltenham and had the same kind of profile, well, not the same kind of profile, but starts typically with starting the season slowly and then progressing all the way back through to win, obviously at Cheltenham. So potentially there for obviously Honey to Bromhead. But then also the Gordon Elliott trained Fureur. Now he could well go to the plate. I think he's a little bit short of the plate. I think he's sort of 16-1, but it's 20-1 for the Grand Annual. And I think for me would be of interest based on his current mark. I mean, he's off a mark of 143. Whether he would be reassessed again, I'm not sure. Was second, obviously, in a novices chase at Nace behind Quilixios, and he's only 2 lengths behind Quilixios. And I think, as I've mentioned in our previous novice chase video, Quilixios has a sneaky chance in the Arkle. So I don't think that's particularly poor form. And again, if it was to be soft and heavy, I think this is really where he could come to the fore, having won at Fairy House on soft ground in December, and then obviously that run at Nace in January was on soft ground. Um, Depending on where he goes, he may well also be a player on the day. But at 20-1, I think he'd be a fairly interesting squeak, and I'd just be watching out necessarily to see where he were to be ended up into because he holds the 2 entry, one in the plate and one in this. Has ran pretty much exclusively over 2 miles though in his chase career. So for me, I think he's going to have, or that may well give him the best opportunity because he was pulled up in last year's Cheltenham Festival when going over the Coral Cup trip at 2 mile 5. So I think he probably would be better suited to go into the Grand Annual based on his current the way he's been campaigned and his mark. He may well get a mark that puts him potentially in the picture because it obviously off 143. Moscada went off 142 last year, depending on how he gets treated with the English handicap. But he would be the one for me to look into, especially at a slightly bigger price at 20-1 if you're looking to play. But for me, at the moment, I think it's just a watching brief as things stand for the Grand Annual until you kind of get closer towards Cheltenham time. Um, there are a few ones that do interest me. I just thought I'd highlight them there. Now, as I said, moving on to the plate. So a lot of these hold multiple entries in the Grand Annual and the plate. Once we get the weights kind of coming out as of Tuesday, we have a better picture. But as I said, we're trying to jump on this as early as possible. Now, the current pretty short priced favourite for the plate is Krabilly. Obviously had won at Exeter the other day, beating Trelawney and a name is escaping me, the Paul Nicholls train, Timoris, and did that really quite nicely. I I feel in this it's the plate, the Trusted Trader plate, which is a handicap chase over 2 miles, 2.5 miles, which is obviously going to be on the 14th of March, being the Thursday of Cheltenham Festival. Um, I'd say strong market leader at the moment for this is the John Joe and Neil trained Krabilly, obviously JP McMillan's owned, having beaten the likes of Timoris and obviously Trelawney. Trelawney trained by David Bass, sorry, ridden by David Bass, trained by Kim Bailey, and then you've got Tamor is trained by Paul Nichols at Exeter the other day. Won fairly nicely in that, and looks to be an interesting prospect. I would say at 7-1 though, best price is a little bit short at the moment. Um, is off a mark of 140, so would definitely go here with a chance. But there's been a big market move on him since that win at Exeter, so definitely one to look out for as well, especially when wearing those colours. When you look down towards the end of the market as well, you've got the likes of Madara. As I said, there's going to be a lot of these that are going to be cross-entered into a fair few. Let's be clear about it for Gavin Cromwell. It's 12-1 as well. It's been a bit disappointing towards the back end of the season when it started off the season looking like it could be a real interesting type, one of those Grade 1 numbers chasers at Cheltenham Festival, but it's just sort of flattered to see since winning that Grade 3 at Cork back in November time. I'm not sold about him. Again, I'd have to kind of wait and see. I think for me, there are two that I quite fancy potentially, depending on factors such as whether obviously the ground and um, when we get kind of declaration, well, not closer towards when the fields start to thin out a little bit. First one for me would be the Gordon Elliott trained Saint Felicien, obviously owned by Rob Core. I think at the moment stands at around 14-1 for this, but is also entered up in the Grand Annual as well. I feel if Saint Felicien, like I was mentioning previously, Fureur, I think Fureur is having form over 2 miles all the way through his chasing career. He would likely go for the 2 mile one, and hence Saint Felicien has run over two, basically exclusively been running over 2 mile four, which is 2.5 miles. For his career, therefore, I would imagine this would be potentially the race he would be aimed at. It would be coming here off the back of an impressive win at Gowran Park back in middle of February, beating Amy Desi in Spanish Harlem. That quite nicely over 3 1/4 lengths. That day on heavy ground, obviously, I think was a bit of a bridesmaid before then in his chasing career. Obviously at Navan with the beginners chase that Facile Vega and in the pocket ran in, he was third behind those. I wasn't given a massive tough time that day, and then kept bumping into a Willie Mullins type in beginners chases after then coming second to Indiana Dream of Willie Mullins at Navan. That was back in December time, and then also coming second at Gowran Park as well to tactical move of Willie Mullins in the end of January before finally obviously breaking his duck. But all of that is fairly strong form, I'd say. Obviously the beginners chase at Navan behind the likes of Fatal Vega in the pocket is fairly strong. The lost coming second to Indiana Dream again is a fairly strong piece of form, and I just think having form on soft to heavy ground again is always going to be beneficial potentially if well when the ground and even when the ground does come up soft again. That's why I feel as if you play potentially on the day. At the moment is off a mark of 147. Again, we'll see where that comes out nearer the time. But I just think potentially if the ground was to go on the softer side, I think again he would be my play in the race. So that would be Saint Felicien, definitely one to just look out for. I The other one is last year's winner, actually Seddon. Again, I've brought up Mascada in the Grand Annual. Seddon for the plate, 16-1. Could be an interesting squeak as well, because I feel as if this is likely where his destination will probably be. He has entered up in a fair few of these over 2.5 miles, but you'd imagine this would be kind of a similar place that he'd be looking to go. He's actually only up £5 from when he won this last year at Cheltenham. Um, having He'd won at Punchestown after this, and then had in a handicap hurdle, sorry, and then he went off and did a few things over the summer before ending his campaign over in America when he came third in that Grade 1 hurdle, the Grand National, American Grand National. Been put away since then, and obviously with John McConnell's form, it's not amazing at the moment, and being an 11-year-old again potentially an issue. But I just think he's one to consider, considering he's only £5 higher than his last winning mark, being at this race. So clearly, we love the courses he's won here twice already. So over course and distance. So just want to note for that one, I would say for me again, I'd put Saint Felicien in my watch list depending on what the ground would show up like on the day. I think he could be quite interesting and fairly unexposed, actually, being still a novice chaser. So it would be Saint Felicien for me in the plate. Towards the Ultima Handicap chase, which would be on the first day of the Cheltenham Festival, the 3 mile, 1 furlong um, Handicap. It's a grade three contest, like all of these Premier Handicaps are. Uh, the market leader in this at the moment is a joint split between Meeting of the Waters of Willie Mullins and the Goffer of Gordon Elliott. I think Meeting of the Water can't be guaranteed to go here. I think it holds five or six different entries in the festival and could basically go wherever. I think he could potentially go to the Brown Advisory. He could well go to the National Hunt Chase, and then he holds entries in pretty much every other handicap as well. So he'd be brave, I think, just to be putting any money down yet because they're clearly leaving their options very much open. The Goffer, on the other hand, only holds an entry in this race, and then obviously looking more towards the Grand National with him. Um, obviously, has gone competitively before at Cheltenham, but I just think he may be operating off a little bit, at least slightly high mark potentially for this. The one I really like in this, with the Goffer being a little bit more exposed, you're going to know what you're getting at, even though he's only a 7-year-old, would be actually Chianti of Kim Bailey's. Obviously, it's still a novice over fences, but has run three times and looked very impressive, winning on debut at Chepstow, where he beat, trying to remember the name of Pull Again Green and Inch House of John Joe and Niels. That's it exactly that. And then he obviously won at Ascot as well it was only a three-runner handicap, but he did that fairly well that day. And then obviously just in January time at Kempton had a very, let's say, um, how to put this nicely, he had a very considerate ride by Harry Cobden that day when he only went down a few lengths to phlegmatic of Dan Skelton's. Was kept really wide that day, so he getting a better look at his fences, and I don't think was given the toughest of time. Potentially looking at a bit of a mark minder for this. Obviously, Kim Bailey's running pretty awfully at the time, so considering um, that obviously that factor as well. I think he ran a really credible race, and I think they managed to keep his mark at around what they wanted it to be. He was off 142 that day. He was only given an extra pound then by the handicapper at 143. I think he's really unexposed, and I think off that mark he would be, for me, one of my stronger bets in for the handicaps. As I said, I think he'd be my first tip I'd put up for this. I'm very keen on Chianti Classico. Obviously didn't go great in the Bartlett last year, but I think you could put a line through that. I don't think that was necessarily about course form. I think that was just a little bit too much to bite off. But I think in this, he's definitely been minded for today. He holds other entries, but Kim Bailey has said this is where he's going to be targeted. And I think he'd have a really, really strong chance at going into this, especially off his mark of 143. Looking down a little bit towards there, you got like the Stumptown, Monbeg Genius, Corrit Rambler. I mean, Corrit Rambler is going to go to the Gold Cup. My Genius target would be more towards Aintree. Stumptown could be of interest, but I think is off a fairly loftier mark now than when he won or when he kicked very competitive actually in the Kim Muir out of 135 last year. There's obviously one at Cheltenham since then, off the mark of 142, been risen by £5 to that 147. I think he may just bump into one slightly less exposed, which for me would be Chianti Classico, but obviously definitely one of the main threats in there. And then we can moving down. A lot of these aren't going to go, but the one I wanted to give a mention to, and I'd say also potentially to have a saver on would be Giovinco, obviously over Cinder Russells, was one of the biggest British hype horses this year coming into the novice chase campaign, and may have slightly underperformed, but I think it's just maybe the campaigning of him hasn't been as ideal as potentially he could have liked, or put him in the most favourable positions. Obviously, unseated when he was on Chase debut at Carlisle, I think he probably would have won that that day when he did unseat. It would have been, I think he unseated two out. Obviously, Goodrich at all won that there. He hasn't really gone on to do much afterwards, but then obviously when his got off the mark of a chasers at a in a handicap at Aintree, where most of the most of the fences were ruled out that day. But looked pretty good in the Esher chase when he went down to Stay Away Faye, who obviously have an interesting play on for the Brown Advisory. I think that's some fairly good form, and I think obviously with the way the race was run, uh, it wasn't necessarily I'd say the best ride he could have got for what he's looking to do and the opponent was going up against, and obviously wasn't helped by the loose horse at that point as well. And then just completely bombed out um, at Christmas time in at Kempton. I think that was really poor actually to go there. I don't think he would have wanted that whatsoever, especially on good ground as well. Most of his form was on soft and or good soft and softer really. So I think that was just a bit of poor planning. Obviously, there's only one a pretty Mickey Mouse race at Newcastle, a two-runner field, but just to get a run back into him, I think that's good to probably get his confidence up again. And it's just interesting he's been given an entry in here off mark of 14146. He could well be a potentially fairly progressive horse down the line. I don't necessarily think he's going to be going to. He holds an entry um, in the Brown Advisory. I don't think he's going to be heading there, and I also don't think he's got another entry as well in the Turners. I don't think he'll go there either. Obviously, Lucinda Russell's not going to have current Rambler in this year, so this is going to fill the void, and at 16-1 best price. I think potentially as an each way play, he could be quite interesting with the progression he could look to make. But my strongest one would be Chianti Classico at the moment, and then I would potentially have a little bit of a saver on Giovinco for the Ultima as well. Final handicap chase of the festival, which is the Fulke Walwyn Muir's Amateur Jockeys Handicap Chase. Obviously, this consisted of all amateur jockeys in this, which obviously can throw a spanner in the works potentially sometimes. But for me, I'm not going to go massively in detail with this. I'm really keen on one, and I'm just going to stick with that. I think Perceval Legallois 8-1 is potentially my strongest bets in any one of these handicap chases. I think it's a complete and utter win bet. I don't think there's any way of playing that each way. He's only off a mark of 137 again. He's probably going to get a judge a little bit more, maybe pushed up slightly. But I just think he's has a bit of a class angle in this race that some of these might not necessarily hold. Obviously, the only risk you're taking in this is that his jumping is a little bit sloppy. Sometimes he's fallen the last 2 out of 3 times he ran and was last at the time up before. So actually not making a particularly strong case. But I just think he was maybe a little bit unlucky in some of those, and I can forgive him with a view towards this. Obviously, it was last in the Grade One in the Drinmore. I think that was just to get a go around and get a bit of confidence into him. And the reason I'm so keen on him was obviously this was the race at the DRF that Hartwood won, the one he fell in last time out. Percival Gal was travelling, I would say, looking like the winner of that race, personally speaking. I mean, it would have been fairly close. I think Hartwood was fairly well in and ran a blinder that day. But I do think he was going very, very well and very strongly towards the last when he did end up falling. And what he obviously had there was Cornerstone Walsh on his back as well. Probably would have just helped get him used to it with him being an amateur rider as well. So potentially that was just a little bit of a setup play looking towards the Kim Muir. This is the only entry he holds, so you know he's going to be going here. And I just do think if he can stay on all fours, he's going to be tough to beat off whatever mark he's going to be given. The benefit of the fact that he fell last time out he's not going to be really raised much at all. Well, he's not going to be raised at all, really. It's only going to be the Irish tax that the English will put on his back. But I don't think that will put him out of contention whatsoever. And I just think when you look at the top of this market, it's good time Johnny, who's heading it up. Obviously, who's I would be a bit windy on him now after I'm trying to get him ready for lined up for the attempts as of today when he unfortunately didn't qualify because he didn't end up running due to a cough. He can't jump from what I can see. Um, he doesn't look like a particularly natural jumper of fence. I wouldn't be massively uh, impressed by him, and I just think stump time might be a little bit too high in the weights to be able to be as competitive this year. So I'm just very keen on Percival Legawa uh, going very well in this, and I think at 8-1 he's an interesting price um, to get on now. I'd say so. For me, it would be Percival Legawa in the Kim Muir. I know I've not gone massively in detail about this, but we've only just finished all of the handicap chases, so we'll be on to the handicap hurdles now. Okay. The county hurdle, with that being the 2 mile handicap hurdle on the 15th of March. So that will be the final day of the festival on the Friday. Last year won by a 33-1 shot for Voir. I think this is actually a race that is not dominated, but typically won by a fairly short price runner. No, fairly long price runner, sorry. Should I say, obviously, Favre 33-1. I don't think many favourites are as competitive in this, so we'll see potentially this is where you can get a little bit of value. Now, towards the head of the market, you have the likes of Iberico Lord and Nicky Henderson's, and then King of Kingsfield of Gordon Elliott's. I think King of Kingsfield will probably go here. I would say. He's obviously entered up in this and the Supreme. I doubt he's going to be running that. I think his best shot of winning would be in this race. Berico Lord, I wouldn't be necessarily sure if he's going to go here after winning the Betfair Hurdle. Um, I'm not necessarily sure or privy to what the Henderson plans are for him, but I wouldn't be 100% that he'd definitely go. Uh, the one of interest I would say is actually Willie Mullins trained absurd. He is a short, I think is a short sort of 10 to 1 for this. Only holds two entries. One again is in the Supreme, which I don't think he'll go to. I think he's more likely to head towards this. He's actually 12 to 1 best price, should I say? So um, potentially of interest, especially depending on what he'll be given from a mark perspective. Obviously, then you got the likes of Zenta, who's come back from chasing towards this. I don't think we'll go to the Med. I think we'll come here, and I think could go fairly strongly as well. Obviously, having won a Grade One juvenile hurdle last season. However, there are a few that I think that could lurk towards the back end of the market that just wants to know. It wouldn't be necessarily a strong bet for me in this race at the moment. I'd definitely wait to play on the day for this potentially. But just so we can see at some prices, I would say the one I have slight interest in is actually Comfort Zone of Joseph O'Brien's trained. Obviously, coming out of the juvenile season last year at 25 to 1, he's by the looks of it been given a mark of 132, depending on obviously where that goes to be assessed as well. Um, was a very impressive juvenile season. You can't really deny that. Obviously, won um, the Triumph Trial at Cheltenham, which this year was won by Sir Gino. He obviously beat uh, that Milton Harris trained scriptwriter in that, and then obviously went on to win the that was after he'd won the Grade Two at Chepstow, which was the finale hurdle as well. And then I think he came second in on the flat in a pretty nice handicap as well. At Leopardstown in September time. I I just think he has obviously haven't been seen on the track since then. Has put away. Maybe it was a slight issue. I'm not 100% sure. He would love softer ground, and I think he could be definitely of interest if he were to come back on any kind of form. 25 to 1. I'm not saying he'd be a bet, but if he was to be thrown in here, as this is his only he only heals this entry, and then the Martin Pipe. But I don't think he'd necessarily be stepped up to 2 mile 4 as he's never ran over that in his career whatsoever, and I think he wasn't necessarily one that showed. I think he had a fairly good turn of foot. Clearly, maybe would stay, but I think would be more effective over the two. So he could be of interest if he was thrown in here. I just think he's one to note. It's quite an interesting entry, and if Joseph O'Brien goes here, then he could be one to potentially play a big factor in it, especially if it was to get on softer ground. Obviously, he's going from 4 to 5 year old, so it's always a difficult year. And he's clearly been minded for later term targets, considering he's not run since then, which obviously Willie Muns had done with the likes of Lossiemouth. I think it could be just of interest to note at 25 to 1 and watch out for, depending on where he were to go if he does go to the festival at all. And obviously you got the likes of Encanto Bruno. If it wasn't going to be soft ground, I think Encanto Bruno on better and good to good soft to up to good ground could be of interest as well at 25 to 1. I know he holds a few different entries as well as this, so it wouldn't necessarily say 100% sure he would go here, but I think he's most effective really over the 2 mile trip. And at 25 to 1, off only a mark of 139, he could be of interest if the ground would turn up good on the day. Obviously, has Cheltenham form as well, having won a bumper here and then won here in the October meeting, I believe, as well. So he just could be of interest. And then there's the final one I thought to mention at a little bit of a price, slightly shorter than 25s, is actually Gigaro of Gordon Elliott's and the Active Stud, or Bective Stud, sorry, at 14 to 1. I think he'd again prefer bit more cut in the ground compared to an Encanto Bruno, but has some very interesting novice hurdle form this year. He's again been a little bit of a bridesmaid, but I think he just keeps on bumping into a few fairly nice types. So I'm just going to run through his form. Obviously, tied in with Mystical Power when Mystical Power won the Moscow Flyer in that Grade Two, and then was third behind No Flyer than him, and obviously Tally Hill, who's now shot towards favouritism of the Supreme, depending on what happens with Ballyburn. Um, I think that's obviously graded in listed level form, and he was never really too far away in either of those, and I think shapes with a fair bit of promise. And obviously, depending on what mark he were to be given, um, he may well be fairly competitive because he is fairly unexposed in this. And I think he could potentially actually go on to it'll be a fairly nice prospect in the future as well. So again, it would depend on necessarily what mark he'd be given. He hasn't been fully assessed yet. as he's only just ran his, I believe he's only qualified with his third hurdle race there because he won at Navan in a maiden hurdle. I know he'd also run at Cork in a maiden, so this is his fourth race. So he'll get his handicap mark out in Ireland, and then we'll see necessarily what the British handicap will give him, who just won of interest and at 14 to 1 in this. He also holds an entry in a fair few of these. I think he's got 5 entries in total. I don't think he's entered in Supreme, which he wouldn't probably go to. He's entered in the Ballymore, which I don't think he'd go to, so that's two off the list already. And he's exclusively also ran over 2 miles for his career so far. Fairly short career, but um, only been 2 miles since then, so I think they probably wouldn't step him up into a handicap company anyway. At Cheltenham Festival, I think they probably like to stick over 2 miles, hence why I think he'd have to go for this race. So just a few fairly big prices. Is this are typically won by something that is at a nice price? Just a note and watch out for on the day potentially if they were to go there. But obviously now moving on to the Coral Cup, up by one of, if I'm being completely honest, I think one of the biggest scam jobs out there at the moment, which is Lange-Dan, obviously the Dan Skelton train Lange-Dan. I don't understand how he's allowed to be constantly dropped, considering um, really what the target is here. Dropped in the weight, should I say? Obviously, won won this last year and has since then been 6 of 7, pulled up 9th of 11 and 14th of 19 out the back of the TV in pretty much every single one of these races he's been in. Obviously, I know connections would say he's a spring horse. I think they're just obviously trying to get his mark down, so it's fairly competitive for him to win this. Now, if you're on the right side of him, then fair play, but they have got him down straight up to the mark. He won this off last year, 1-4-1. So I wouldn't be piling in anything yet because I think this has obviously been massively lined up for this an 8 to 1. Fancy him and go for it, but I personally, just for ethical reasons, would maybe stick clear. The interesting one here, and I know he is also like a few of these involved or entered up towards the Martin Pipe, is Willie Mullins trained Saint Majest. Has only run 4 times in his life, 2 times in Auteuil, and then obviously 2 times with Willie Mullins when he kind of flunked in his Punchestown novice hurdle debut. When it was 6 of 9, ended up being behind Monbeg Park that day of Sean Thomas Doyle, but won on the 27th of December, so the day after Boxing Day at Limerick on heavy ground over 2 mile 4, um, to obviously get himself off the winning ways when he actually ended up beating Noble Yates in that. Not necessarily sure what his mark is going to be given. I know in the islands we're given the mark of 1 and 40, whether he's going to get taxed a little bit further now by the British handicapper because of what Noble Yates has gone on to do in the Cleve hurdle. May well do, which could obviously dent him in regards to chances in either of these. You'd have to wait and see. He just could be very much unexposed and going quite considerably under the radar. I guess, well, not under the radar, considering he's 8 to 1 joint fav, but he could just be one that's a bit of a lurker for Willie Mullins there. So moving down towards the rest of the list, I wouldn't necessarily say I have a really strong play in this. It'd be interesting to see where No Ordinary Joe goes. I know he's also entered up in the Martin Pipe, and considering he was second to Oroco last year in that, I imagine that's probably where he will go. But if he were to go here, he potentially would be of interest. But I'd say for me, Sam and Jess would be the one I'd be interested to take Langadang on with if he were to be declared in this and um, not go to the Martin Pipe. But we'll move swiftly on to the final race of actually the Cheltenham Festival, which is the Martin Pipe of the Conditional Jockey's Handicap, which is a Sam Majest as well. So 8 to 1 for the Coral Cup, and then 8 to 1, 7 to 1 best price for the Martin Pipe. So maybe I'll go here. I'd be interested in him in either of these really. Obviously, Willie Mullins trains a second favourite as well in this at the moment, which is Quai de Bourbon. Again, is a French import that's clearly very unexposed, having run at Compiègne or Toy before moving over to Willie Mullins when he's won twice on Nason maiden hurdle debut and then Clonmel as well in January time on heavy ground. Again, those are the two that could be very much unexposed. I imagine they probably split them up. I would be they may well run them together. I'm not 100% sure, but if they were to split them up, then maybe they would be interesting to play both of them because they do look to be very unexposed. And Willie Mullins had the knack of chucking in a French import in this that's typically unexposed, like State Man and Galopin des Champs, and they typically win one of these handicaps hurdles very easily. So just want to know. As I said, No Ordinary Joe is 12 to 1 in this. It was given a very thoughtful ride the other day at Kempton when he was third. Uh, I think he could be a big player in this again. Obviously, having course form, coming second in this specific race last year, I think he potentially would have a chance of going on better, but he may well bump into a little bit of an unexposed type as well. The other one I think is just a little bit of interest is a Gordon Elliott trained Stellar Story, obviously with Giggintown Stud. Has entered up in a few things. He, I think, has an entry in the Bartlett and also the Ballymore. I don't think he's going to go to either of those. I think he would go here. Um, I think he'd go well off a mark of 140. Obviously, it was going to be assessed, potentially given a little bit of an Irish tax, but um, was a very classy bumper horse last season. He beat I think he beat El Antique at Nace in his bumper days, and then won his maiden hurdle quite nicely at Navan actually in November time when he beat Larky Hill for Willie Mullins. Obviously, since then has been a little bit not so disappointing. He's ran good races in every single race he's running. When he was obviously second, sorry, he was third to Stella, sorry, he was third to Slade Steel in that Grade Two Navan Novices Hurdle, and then was second again at Limerick on Boxing Day to Lochlin in the Jaguar Land Rover Novice Hurdle, which is Grade Two as well. Wasn't particularly impressive at the DRF when Dancing City went and won the Nathaniel Lacey, but I just think he could be thrown in a little bit off a mark and again be a fairly unexposed type over hurdles. Is one to potentially watch out for as a bit of a lurker in this market later down the line. And then the other one I thought I'd mention at a bit of a price would be Waterford Whispers for Henry de Bromhead at 20 to 1. So yeah, fairly big shout out there. Obviously JP McManus owns him as well, so not necessarily sure where he may go depending on where the rest of his runners were to go. But this is his only entry at the Cheltenham Festival. So if he does go or not, it'd be interesting to see. Um, won twice over hurdles at Galway and Fairyhouse before coming second in the end of December at Leopardstown to Champagne Admiral by a length in a handicap hurdle. I just think he could be a little bit unexposed as well, having only run 4 times, and potentially off a fairly low mark of 127 could be of interest, just for a bigger price play. But then just finally on to the last handicap hurdle and the last of our handicap um, of the preview show. Obviously, we've gone through the Boodles already in our juvenile show, so we're looking now towards the Pertemps handicap hurdle. Obviously, the qualifiers I think are pretty much all done now, having the last one run this week. Actually, this today being the Sunday, um, the 25th of February. Now, at the current moment, the top of the market is Cletus Poulor of Gordon Elliott's. Obviously, having qualified today actually at Nace, when coming second in that Pertemps qualifier, it is around 8 to 1. Obviously has become second to a fairly few um, nice prospect before qualifying for this. I think he could obviously go here with a bit of a squeak. But again, I'm not going to waste much more time. I really like one in this, and this would be my probably, as I said, I've got a few strong bets in these. So Perceval Legallois would probably be one of my stronger ones. Chianti Classico as well, and this one at a nice little price. I think you can get each way value on this one as well. Will be White Rhino, so trained by Oliver Greeno or Joshua Guerrero. Obviously won over course and distance at Cheltenham in the December meeting when he ran out a pretty convincing win in that Class 2 handicap hurdle. He ended up beating Bold Endeavour and Nicky Henderson's that day. Um, I think he could be of interest, especially off a fairly low mark of 129. Obviously qualified when coming second at Huntington, which was basically third at Huntington in the Pertemps qualifier, which is basically the perfect run and prep run for this. Getting him qualified, I think he's going to love running in a big field handicap. I think he's going to love um, Cheltenham as well. He clearly goes well at the track, having come first and second there over 2 mile 5 and then winning over 3 miles. I think he's going to stay all day, and I think he's fairly ground versatile as well, having won on good soft and also soft ground. Um, I think regardless of where it shows up, he's going to run a very big race, especially off a very, very lenient mark, in my opinion. Still fairly unexposed over hurdles and at 14 to 1. I think he could go each way and have a nice little price there. I say unexposed, he's run 11 times, but I just think he's really getting into his handicap career now. Um, I think that mark of 129 is massively exploitable in this. I think he's been completely lined up with a brilliant qualifying run at Huntington. I think 14 to 1 each way for me is really one of my strongest bets in any of the Cheltenham handicaps. So I think White Rhino for the Pertemps, for the uh, the Greeno and Guerrero team could run a massive race, and as I said, you can get each way value there as well with the price. Um, so he would be my play. I appreciate everyone's time. I know it's been a little bit of a quick kind of analysis of these because we haven't to run through sort of 8 to 9 different races. Um, but I just wanted to get through as many as possible. And it's kind of hard to see at the moment without the weights out and without definite confirmed runners because some of these horses in there hold sort of 5, 6 different entries. So not 100% sure where everything's going to go. But I appreciate everyone's time if you got this far in the video. And if you've enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel as we're going to be posting a lot more stuff coming up towards the road to Cheltenham and then afterwards. Just to summarise on my handicap fancies, I think for me in the Ultima Chianti Classico at 10 to 1 is a very strong bet, and I would be having a saver as well on Giovinco. I know it's a bit cheeky to have two in the same race, but I think both of them can go really well. And going to be fairly unexposed and just relish the 3 mile trip over Cheltenham. I think they're going to go particularly strongly. Obviously, with the British typically winning that race, both British trained, so you're kind of ticking all the boxes there. Perceval, Legallois, and the Muir, I think he's been lined up for this, and if he can stay on the fours, and I think he's going to take a lot of beating in that. I think imagine Connor Stonewall will be booked for the ride like he was at the DRF, and I think he's going to be very tricky to beat. And then just finally, again, as just previously mentioned there, White Rhino in the attempts, 14 to 1 each way for me is going to be a massive player then, and I really do fancy his chances um, for Greeno and Guerrero. So that's everything from me there, guys. As I said, we'll be back, I think, in Wednesday or Thursday time with ideally the open races for the Cheltenham Festival, and then we'll move on from that to, I believe it's going to be looking towards the mares races because we haven't done them yet either. But also looking towards this week. The plan for this week's video is going to be the open races on Wednesday or Thursday, a weekend preview, ideally on Thursday or Friday, and then we'll finish off with the mares races. Um, yeah, the mares races after that, which will be next Monday. Then we've covered all of our Cheltenham preview shows. We've done all of that there. And then it will just be building up towards the festival because it would only be about a week and a half away. So, as I said, exciting times to come, especially with Cheltenham and then beyond into Aintree. And we'll catch you guys in a bit. Appreciate everyone's time and thank you for watching. Bye bye.